COVID. This meeting is being recorded. Thanks, Dave. This is a webinar posted by Alaska Sea Grant on COVID-19 economic relief for Alaska's small seafood businesses. And we decided, as there's a lot of information coming out about all of these different economic relief programs available both at the state level and the national level, and I imagine lots of you have seen webinars and other information available, but we wanted to make something available specifically for commercial fishermen, small seafood operators, and aquaculture producers. So we have asked a panel of experts, done some research into what these programs are, and then we've invited a panel of experts to help you understand what these programs are and determine whether or not they might be useful for you and how. So I'm just going to very briefly introduce Alaska Sea Grant here. Alaska Sea Grant is a program that's a partnership between the University of Alaska, and we're technically part of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, although as you can see by this map, we're spread out all over the state, and a national program called National Sea Grant, which is funded through NOAA. And so our jobs are to find out what the needs are in the community, the coastal communities around the state, and then bring university-based, science-based resources to you to help you answer your questions. So we have a series of specialists and agents based in communities throughout the coast, as you can see on this map. You'll meet Gabe Dunham, who is our Dillingham agent, and my name's Sunny Rice. I'm your Petersburg agent. We'll have Julie Matweyu, who's our Kodiak agent, is on the line as well, and Melissa Good, who is our Unalaska agent. Then we've got some great tech support from Dawn Montano and Dave Barty, who are based up in Fairbanks. So I'd like you to consider Alaska Sea Grant your resource as you have questions as we go through this. We've done direct marketing workshops as well, another particular workshop for catcher sellers, sort of in response to what's going on with COVID. So please feel free to look us up and reach out to us if you have questions or needs as we go through this interesting time in our world right now. Today's webinar, we're going to first hear from Lee Klingert, and she is with CFAB, the Alaska Commercial Fishing and Agriculture Bank, based in Anchorage there, and she has been working with us at the Alaska Sea Grant program for many years, primarily as part of the FishBiz effort and Alaska Young Fisherman Summit. And so she's going to give us some general overviews, having worked with commercial fishing fishermen for 34 years as a banker, about weathering difficult economic times that may be facing some of us. So I was really glad that she was willing to join us. Then Gabe Dunham is going to give us a brief overview of each of the programs listed there on the slide. And then we have, hopefully the last half hour we'll have available to do a Q&A with an invited panelist who I'll tell you about in just a minute. But I wanted to make a note that we are happy to take your questions throughout this program as we're speaking, but we're going to do that in chat. And so if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you should pop up a dashboard of things, and there should be a chat link there. So if you go to that chat, not link, but a chat button, if you push that chat button, a window should pop up and that will allow you to chat, and you can choose, if you would please choose Melissa Good. Melissa Good's name will be listed there in the chat room, and direct your questions to Melissa. She's going to be collecting those questions throughout the presentations, and then she'll be facilitating our conversation at the very end. So our panel includes Ryan Beeson. He is a certified public accountant with LG Rayfield and helped us out at in a great manner at our last Alaska Young Fisherman Summit. We'll have Clark Behags, pardon me if I get pronunciation wrong. He's with the Small Business Administration, which is one of the programs that are administering some of these programs. We also have Kevin Wynn from the Small Business Administration. We have Alex Weitzner, who's with the Investment Office at the AIDEA, Lee, who I mentioned already, and then Keith Graham, who is with the Alaska Department of Labor, who can help talk to us about some of the unemployment programs. So that's the outline of what we're going to be doing. I'm going to first, I'm going to quit sharing my screen here and say hello to you all, and hopefully we can pull up Lee's video and just get a few words from Lee Klingert, who is the CEO of the Commercial Fishing and Agriculture Bank here in Alaska.
Well, it looks like it's taken a minute to reconnect my, there we go. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out to join us. I hope you'll find the information valuable. As Sunny mentioned, I've been doing financing with the fishing industry for about 34 years. So I guess to use a cliche, this isn't my first rodeo. This is the first time we've dealt with something that is so systemic. So that's a little unusual, but not the first one. And if it is your first one, I'm afraid to tell you it probably won't be your last. Fishing is cyclical, so it's likely that we're all gonna experience this again in some shape or form. First and foremost, I would offer that, you know, no matter what you do this year, stay healthy. Sunny alluded to the fact that I work with the Young Fisherman Summit, and so if any of you have been to those presentations, you'll heard me or others perhaps talk about the 5 C's of credit, and this is the one where I'm going to emphasize communication. It's really important in this particular situation or situations like these that you communicate with your lender or any other person that you may owe money to. You're going to want to reach out and have discussions with them. We've heard from a lot of our borrowers. The timing of when you want to talk to your lender is going to depend on when your problem arises. So if you haven't started your season yet, it's really hard to say what your problem is, because right now we don't know what fisheries are going to open and we don't know what's going to happen. So be mindful that until you exactly are able to define the problem, you're probably not going to want to talk to the lender just yet. And the other thing to keep in mind is, while things may not look really great right now, assuming that we can go fishing and stay healthy, there are some things happening in the world or on a national level to the protein market that have the potential to be a positive thing for Alaska seafood if we do get to go out and harvest. So even though it may look really bad right now, things can change pretty rapidly. If you have multiple lenders that you owe money to, be it for your boat, quota, your house, you need to reach out to all of them, and you need to try to, if you determine that you have a situation, you need to reach out to everybody. You need to try to make everybody fit into that plan. So beyond trying to secure the disaster funds or any type of government funding that they're going to talk about later, you want to communicate with your lenders and come up with a plan that works for all of them. And you want to keep in mind that we've heard a lot about deferments, payment deferments. You can extend your payments. And while in general, those are a good idea, you also want to keep in mind that that doesn't mean the interest is going to quit accruing on those loans. So if you have the means to pay, it's in your best interest to do so, especially with credit cards, because what generally happens on those is they will take the interest as it accrues and add it to your balance. So you're going to end up paying interest on interest, and that can get expensive. At the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, I would suggest you sit down and prepare a balance sheet so you know exactly where you're at. What are your assets? What are your liabilities? I think in the FishBiz website, there's these documents, if you don't have one, that will help you understand exactly, you know, what your personal situation is. The next thing is you're going to have to separate moving forward, you know, what are your wants, what are your needs? Needs are something that you have to address. Wants are something that you're, you know, when the time is right, you can do it. Evaluate whether it might be a better idea to take out new debt rather than maybe modifying the existing debt. And this balance sheet will help you make that decision. Explore ways that you can increase your income outside of your fishing, whether it's through other employment, whether it's taking out unemployment, whether it's potentially crewing in other fisheries. You're going to want to look at what your options are that don't require you to pay out any money or incur any new debt. Do you have any idle assets? And I'm approaching this as if there is a a situation where you can't pay. So it's kind of looking at the worst case. You know, do you have idle assets? And when you list your assets on your balance sheet, do you have something that you can sell? A common thing for people is, I don't want to sell when the value is down, which makes sense. However, there is a cost to holding on to these assets if you have debt that you're continuing to accrue interest on, that's going to cost you money. So you want to look at the big picture. Maybe it isn't the optimum time to sell, but it's costing you more by not selling because you can't pay your obligation. First and foremost, don't panic as you watch maybe the value of your assets decline. That's only really important if you're going to buy or you're going to sell. Your permit, your quota, your vessel, these are access to fisheries. These are items that help you produce income. So unless you're going to sell, them declining in value isn't really relevant at this point. Resist the urge to extend yourself to enter new areas like self-marketing. We're getting a lot of inquiries about people doing that. And I'm not saying that's a bad choice, but if you have to lay out cash to do it, probably not the right time. If it's something that you just see yourself doing temporarily, you have to weigh the investment cost versus the return. It really should be a long-term project or decision. Be careful what you do with what cash you do have or what cash you do get from any disaster funds or anything, because your lender is going to want to know and they're going to be paying attention, you know, as to how you're distributing that money. And remember that just like you, the way, you know, you earn your income is by fishing and getting paid for that fish. The way that your lender pays their bills is by getting paid back on their loans. And this isn't just affecting the fishing industry. They're probably seeing this with a lot of their customers right now. And the final thing is that, you know, with crisis also comes opportunity. We've seen some really high permit prices, some really high quota prices, some really high vessel prices. There's some adjustments happening in the marketplace right now. And so it's creating also some good opportunities to buy. And while you may not have the cash or anything right now, as I said at the beginning, this or a crisis or a condition will happen again. So if you haven't got the cash right now, it's probably a good time to plan for the future and save up for when this does or another correction occurs. And then just as a last thing, you know, in a worst case scenario, you might see or hear the word bankruptcy thrown around, and this is always a viable option if you have nothing else. But I want to caution you, because there will probably be some push in this area. It's a very expensive option. So you want to make sure that you've done everything you can and worked with all your lenders to try to come to a solution without involving that, because you're paying for their attorney, you're paying for your attorney and any of your other creditors' attorney. So while it is an option, I caution you, it should be a last resort. And finally, I'd like to say that no matter how bad or how good things are, they're going to change. So we want to keep this in mind for the future. And I thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Lee. Now we're going to move to Gabe Dunham. We're going to have Gabe pull up his presentation. He'll give us an overview of the programs. And for those of you that might have joined a little bit late, if you have a question while Gabe is speaking, if you could type something in the chat box. If you hover over the bottom of your Zoom screen there, a chat box should pop up. And then direct those questions to Melissa Good. There'll be a drop-down menu. She's going to be facilitating our Q&A at the end. So feel free to type those in the whole time. She'll keep track of them, and we'll ask them of our panel, who are experts in all of these programs that Gabe's going to overview for us, and we'll use those in the last half hour. So take it away, Gabe.
Thanks, Sunny. Can you verify that you've got my slides up on your screen?
Yes, I do. Yes, we do.
Thank you. All right, everybody, again, Gabe Dunham here. And what I'm going to do for you for the next 15 minutes or so is provide really what's going to be a 10,000-foot overview of these 9 programs. I've included a various number of links here, including the Alaska Sea Grant image right there, the logo, and the FishBiz project logo. So when you access this slideshow, on our registration page. Just know that those links are there for your convenience. First, a couple of comments, and these dovetail exactly with what Lee has already mentioned. Those balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statements, those financial statements are all information you're going to need. So go ahead and get those together. Talk with your lender and rely on reputable sources to stay informed on health information, whatever economic relief is coming out, disaster declaration, and so on. So first I want to talk about some federal economic relief programs through the SBA. And this one is the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. The PPP is a forgivable loan designed to help businesses keep workers on the payroll, and they can be forgiven if employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and the money is used for things like payroll, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. The period, the applicable period goes through 6/30 of 20 this year. And that period began April 3rd. You may have seen this in the news recently that the program had, for lack of a better way to say it, run out of money. They're working on getting that program reinstated and refunded right now. As far as eligibility, any small business concern that meets the SBA size standards, and this includes sole proprietors, independent contractors, which we'll talk about a little bit, and self-employed persons. A few details. The loan's forgivable if certain requirements are met, and this is important, including that 75% of the funds are used for payroll. The loan amount is equal to 2.5 times the average monthly payroll costs. And an important detail is that payments to crew members that are issued at 1099, aka self-employed persons or contractors, don't count towards payroll, so crew members have to apply separately, and we'll go through that example. The first hypothetical example, we have a business owner with employees, and that business owner's annual pay is $30,000 and has 3 employees that are paid through W-2s for a total eligible payroll expense of $75,000. Divide that through the year, and that's a monthly payroll expense of $6,250, and then multiply it by 2.5 to get the eligible loan amount of $15,625. The limitations here that this money can be used for mortgage interest, rent, utilities, interest on debts incurred before February 15th. No more than 25% can be used on those before February 15th February 15th to get complete loan forgiveness there. So the details are really important with the PPP. Let's talk about a second hypothetical. We have a business owner with independent contractors. This could be pretty representative of a typical commercial fishing operation, where the business owner's annual pay is $30,000 and workers are paid with 1099s, still at $45,000, but since they're paid with 1099s, the annual eligible payroll expense still just reflects the business owner's pay at $30,000. So you go through the monthly payroll calculation and multiply it by 2.5, and you get an eligible loan total of $6,250, where the same limitations on debts incurred before February 15th apply in this situation as well. So down towards the bottom here, we've got our third hypothetical example with the PPP program, and that's the independent contractor. This is applicable to likely the crew scenario. The annual income in this case is $30,000, so we do that monthly income calculation, and it comes out to $2,500. Multiply that times 2.5, and we have an eligible loan total for this person at $6,250. An important note that I'll make here is that you've probably seen some advertisements from lenders to help you file or apply for your PPP program. It's an important note to think about that not all lenders, or some lenders will require you to hold a business account for them to file your application for you. And that's not always going to be the case for a crew member if you're trying to advise some of your crew members on how to go after some of this assistance. Fortunately, there are some other options. For example, I think PayPal and Cabbage and a few others offer a service where you can apply for the PPP through them. Let's talk about our next SBA program. That's the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL loan and emergency advance. Now, this provides economic support to small businesses to help overcome temporary loss of revenue from COVID-19. This is also where you apply for your economic disaster loan advance of up to $10,000. People eligible or entities eligible rather are small businesses, cooperatives, nonprofits, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. And a few of the details are loans up to $2 million. There's some information on interest rates there. And one detail is that you must have been in business on January 31st of 2020. A few notes about the EIDL advance. Again, this is something that you apply for along with the EIDL loan application that provides an emergency advance of up to $10,000. This loan does not have to be repaid even if you're denied an EIDL loan by the SBA. You can use this EIDL advance money for paying sick leave to employees who can't work, maintaining payroll, meeting increased costs for materials, and making rent, mortgage, or rent payments. And those are just a few examples. So a few notes here on using an EIDL and a PPP loan. You can apply for both, including that EIDL loan advance. You can't use the funds from both loans for the same purpose. And if you do receive an EIDL, depending on the day that you receive that, it might be refinanced into your PPP loan. The EIDL advance is not used to calculate your PPP loan amount, but the amount of your EIDL advance will reduce the amount of your forgivable loan under the PPP. And again, those are just a couple of details, and there are additional details that you'll want to go over in great detail with your lender and perhaps the assistance from the SBA. Let's talk about two more SBA programs. The first is the Express Bridge Loans, or EBL, and the debt relief. Now, the EBL program gives SBA guaranteed bridge loan financing basically to small businesses that are applying for, but also waiting for that long-term financing to help them. Small businesses nationwide that have been adversely impacted are eligible. And small businesses also have to have an existing banking relationship with an SBA Express lender on or before the date of that disaster. A few details here. EBL loans can only be made for up to 6 months after the date of that presidential disaster declaration. And the loan amount is up to $25,000, and that's guaranteed by the SBA. Now on to the SBA debt relief program. This is where SBA payment and deferral programs are offered for holders of current 7A and 504 loans and microloans. And for details, I recommend you contact your SBA lender or the SBA for information and eligibility on that SBA debt relief program. So let's talk about another piece of seafood assistance coming from the CARES Act, and that is the Section 12005 Seafood Industry Assistance. There isn't honestly a whole lot of information that has come out about this, but it does authorize the Secretary of Commerce to provide $300 million in appropriated funds for fishery participants affected by the coronavirus. This is available to fishery participants, including tribes, persons, fishing communities, aquaculture businesses, processors, or other fishery-related businesses. So this is a very broadly applicable assistance program. Now the details, as I mentioned earlier, they're to be determined. I suggest that folks check the NOAA Fisheries Coronavirus Update page and your applicable Marine Fisheries Commission for updates. And I've got the links for NOAA's Fisheries Coronavirus Update page and the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission here on this page. The state of Alaska has an economic relief program through the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, or ADA. It's called Sustaining Alaska's Future Economy Guarantee Program, or AK-SAFE. Now, this provides a loan guarantee through Alaska's banks and financial institutions to participating qualified businesses and nonprofit organizations. And Alaska-based businesses that are impacted by the COVID-19 emergency are eligible with an established and effective collateralized loan agreement with an eligible lender. A few details here. Again, this program provides a guarantee under an existing secured loan agreement, and the amount is up to $1 million per borrower. And I've got a link down here for the AK-SAFE operating procedures document. It's quite exhaustive and a good resource to describe the details and what this program offers. Here's a quick overview of some of the CARES Act unemployment benefits. The CARES Act has created emergency relief for unemployed workers affected by COVID-19 under 3 different programs. The Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, or PEUC program, provides up to 13 additional weeks of unemployment benefits for individuals that have exhausted regular unemployment benefits. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA program, provides up to 39 weeks of federally funded unemployment benefits to individuals not typically eligible for unemployment benefits, including independent contractors and sole proprietors. And finally, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or FPUC, provides an additional $600 per week for individuals that receive regular unemployment benefits, PUA or PEUC, beginning March 29 through July 31. The key for accessing these CARES Act unemployment benefits is that they go through your state's unemployment program. So for Alaska, the link below here is for the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and you can find a lot of good information on that site. And also for our friends in Washington, the Washington State Unemployment Security Department has information on how to access these funds as well. Lastly, I'll mention very briefly the employee retention tax credits. Now, this is a fully refundable tax credit for employers that equals 50% of qualified wages. To be eligible, businesses must have conducted operations in a trade or business during the calendar year of 2020 and have fully or partially suspended their operation due to orders from a governmental authority limiting commerce, travel, or group meetings because of COVID-19. They also have to have experienced a significant decline in gross receipts during that calendar quarter. A few details: employers can claim the employee retention credit with an EIDL loan, but not the employee retention credit and a PPP loan. Another important point is that qualified wages do not include payments made to contractors. Going back to that 1099 receiving person again. And I suggest that people interested in this, or if you think this might be something that you can take advantage of, check with your CPA, or I've also linked to the page for the IRS website that discusses this program. I want to highlight a couple of the sources that I used when putting together these slides. The Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the Alaska Small Business Development Center, which has a great page with all kinds of COVID-19 related economic relief resources. ADA, the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, has a page just for their AK Safe program. The National Sea Grant Law Center supplied a lot of the information and examples that I used in the slideshow. And also, so you can go to the linked website for them and download some of their information. But also I wanted to call attention to this document that they just released the other day called the CARES Act Tip Sheet for Self-Employed Individuals. And that's an active link there for that resource as well. I highly recommend that one. And also, of course, the U.S. Small Business Administration has multiple sites and links to provide resources for everything that we've been talking about here. With that, I think we can go to Melissa Good to start taking questions. I think we've got a number of our Q&A panelists from several organizations that Sunny pointed out initially. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Maybe if we can ask our panelists, maybe we can ask our panelists that are here to share their video so that we can see you when you're talking.
Right. So I'm just going to start from the top. They seem to have come through in a pretty good order based upon the slides. All of the questions I'm just going to address to the panel as a whole, and whoever has the expertise and can answer that question, please do for the rest of the group. So our first question is, are there any banks who work specifically with commercial fishing that are accepting application loans for PPP? Sounds like they've been contacting banks that are not accepting any more applications.
Well, I can just tell you that the ones that do specifically commercial fishing are going to be, you know, CFAB is unique in that that's all we do, and then the state loan program. And because neither of us, our depositories are really set up for that, we are not able to process these loans. We don't have the resources. I have heard that, you know, as Gabe said, you're going to have a bank account, or you'll have to have some relationship. So if you haven't contacted wherever your checking relationship is, I would offer that. I've been referring people to Northrim. They seem to be fairly responsive. I know that some of you probably bank with Wells Fargo. They had some issues at the beginning, and I'm just, you know, it's telling you what I've heard from the people I've dealt with. And so I've actually heard from someone today where they were actually notified by Northrim that their loan was approved.
Okay. And I just want to let everyone know that we are going to be putting these slides up, and they're going to be available to download on our website later. And that's alaskaseagrant.org. So our next question is, I fish by myself and make all my money in the summer, so I'm not in need of any aid right now. All my expenses are covered until this fall and I have no payroll. Their concern is that they'll come this fall and the season may have gone terribly, and at that point they need funds. Is there any expectation of a similar program coming out that could cover the summertime?
Well, this is Alan Weissner with ADA. I'm not certain about what the other federal programs are, but what I would highlight with the programs that ADA is putting together, they're entirely linked with the disaster timeline that the governor's established for the state. And these programs are available through the end of the year at this point in time. So we intend to keep these programs in place until they reach the program caps. And if there's availability at that point in time, then we would ask anyone to keep accessing those programs.
All right. Another
And
question. Oh, go ahead,
for
please.
a second, you know, and to follow up on that, if you qualify for any type of funding right now, based on the models that Gabe has, you know, there's limited amount of funds. And so I would actually encourage people to apply for it. Now, if you don't need the money, you can always, you know, return the money. But if we get to the end of the year and we don't have any funds, I'd hate to see you lose out. So if you do qualify for any, especially like even the $10,000 EIDL loan, you know, I've been telling people to just go ahead and apply. Better safe than sorry.
Okay, thanks. Our next question, a fisherman has sold out of one fishery and bought into another fishery, which required a lot more investment. And if they are not able to fish this new fishery this coming summer, or the fishery is disrupted or their funds are disrupted because of COVID, can they still prove economic harm because they are now in a new fishery or trying to be? And if we can't answer any of these questions, what we'll do is highlight them and try to find answers and get back to the group.
Melissa, this is Gabe. I'm having a little bit of hard time getting Clark Behags from the SBA, his audio online. So he's got some of the answers to these questions. So, but yeah, just like you said, we'll be able to address some of these at a later time for sure.
Thanks, Gabe. Our next question, how can a sole proprietor show that their PPP funds went towards their payroll to qualify for the loan forgiveness? Do they write a check to themselves?
I can attempt to address this. I know a lot of the confusion that we've had is you hear all these terms, payroll this, payroll that. Well, most of our fishermen are small Schedule Cs and they don't per se have payroll to anybody. At the end of the day, the payroll is considered your net income from the Schedule C. So to determine your eligibility for the PPP loan, it would be your 2019 Schedule C, line 31 is what they would use that to calculate it off of. So you don't per se pay yourself. You may take a draw out of the business every month to cover your supplies or your living expenses, but those aren't really payroll costs. It's what your net income from the business is, if that makes sense.
All right, thanks. This next question we'll probably get towards Gabe. Looking at PPP hypothetical number 2 from the slides, the owner would like to pay himself the $6,000, and that would count as him using the funds for payroll, and that's a question. I don't know if we want to pull up that slide.
Yeah, certainly. That's just what I was going to do so people could see what we're talking about. That was hypothetical number 2, is that right?
Correct.
So we have the business owner with independent contractors paid with 1099s. So the business owner's annual pay here in this example is $30,000, and then that the pay that goes to the workers through 1099s is $45,000, so it doesn't count. So in this example, that eligible payroll expense reflects that owner's annual pay.
Hello, this is Clark Butog with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good, great. Sorry, I wasn't able to answer some of those questions earlier. I was having a hard time unmuting myself. Can I go back and try to answer some of those questions at this time?
Sure. Okay.
So I think the first question was, how do you find a PPP lender? You guys are having difficulty finding a lender, especially I hear a lot of stories about banks are not accepting new clients. So one way to find a lender is as of yesterday, SBA listed a list of all PPP lenders by state on our SBA.gov website. And in addition to that, we have recruited some fintech companies to be PPP lenders. So companies such as PayPal, Intuit, and Square, and Cabbage.com, just to name a few, are now PPP lenders. So if you can't find one that's near you, I recommend those companies also. Now we did get a message that the president signed the bill adding more funds to the PPP program. There's some new languages in the bill that SBA and the Treasury has to work out over the weekend, but we expect to reopen the PPP applications on Mondays starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Thank you for that. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Someone applied for emergency disaster funds and they have not heard back yet. Should they reapply?
I think Kevin's online too, but I think he's muted also. trying to get unmuted. But in response to that, if you have already applied for the economic injury disaster loan and have an application number that starts with the number 3, you are in good status. We are starting to see businesses in Alaska receive the EIDL advance as of last week. We're also starting to see more businesses in Alaska getting the EIDL loan this week. So I know it's been a long wait for businesses in Alaska to get some sort of response back from the EIDL, but it is coming. The thing was, the state of Alaska was one of the last states to be impacted by the COVID-19. So it took a while for the state of Alaska to make that disaster declaration because they needed the necessary data to make that declaration. But as a result of that, all these businesses from other states were able to submit their application first, and before Alaska could even apply. So now that the ODA, Office of Disaster Assistance, has been processing these applications, only now are we starting to see Alaskan small businesses get a response back. So if you do have that application for that number that starts with a 3, you are in good status. In fact, if Kevin was able to chime in, he would tell you not to reapply again, because that creates a second application, which kind of slows down the process. It adds process to the people at the processing center, and at some point they'll have to delete one of the applications. So if you have a 3, just be patient. People will be reaching out to you, and I know it's been a long time, and I appreciate everyone's patience on this.
Thank you. Our next question is paying insurance premiums a qualifying expense for any of the programs to get loan forgiveness?
Yeah, let me read that word for word, just so I don't give you the wrong information. So the PPP can be used for, I'm sorry, hold on, let me. Sorry, if you kind of bear with me here. Let me get the exact wording. That way I don't give you bad information.
No problem.
Okay, so the PPP can be used for interest payments on any other debt obligations that were incurred before February 15th, 2020.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, I want to list the other expenses that you can use the PPP loan for. So you can use the PPP loan for payroll costs, costs related to continuation of group healthcare benefits, mortgage interest payments, rent payments, utility payments, and refinancing of any SBA EIDL loans. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So our next question is, someone applied for an EIDL loan but did not qualify since their crewmen are not considered employees. Do they still apply for the PPP loan?
Yes. Yes, I would say apply for both. With the PPP loan, you just have to share what your compensation, what your average monthly payroll is to the bank, so that way they can calculate what the maximum loan amount can be on the PPP loan.
All right, now someone is asking to SBA if Alaska First National Bank is a lender that qualifies or is doing PPP.
Yes, they are. I don't know what their status is at the moment, but I do know that they are they are eligible under the PPP program.
Right, thank you. So the next one is a situation they want some information on. Their understanding is that the PPP applicants must use income total after depreciation of their quota shares, permits, etc. is deducted, which results in a much lower number eligible for the forgivable loan. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that? There's a couple of things that I'm not didn't hear. Sorry.
Sure. Their understanding is that PPP applicants must use income total after depreciation of quota shares, permits, etc. is deducted, which results in a much lower number eligible for the forgivable loan. Is that correct?
If you're, I'm assuming this is a self-employed person who's using a Schedule C. You would, if you're using the Schedule C, then you would use the net income to calculate your monthly payroll costs.
All right. Let's see. Here's an unemployment question. If you or your crew end up needing to apply for unemployment, do you sign up in Alaska or your state of residence? And we can figure out the answer to that one and get back to the group. All right, our next question is, which program did Senator Cantwell get approved last week?
Melissa, I'm going to butt
We'll
in
have
for
to-
just a second because Keith Graham answered the unemployment question, and that was you would apply for unemployment in the state that you worked in.
Thank you, Sunny.
Yeah.
All right, our next question is back to PPP. Can a fisherman that has a sub-S corporation who pays himself on a 1099 in 2019 apply for a PPP loan using the formula that Gabe outlined? Their corporation pays themselves from May 15th through September 30th.
Yeah, if you're a 1099, you can submit a PPP on your own. You wouldn't be considered an employee of who paid you, but as a 1099, you're eligible to apply for the PPP for yourself.
I'll add on to that too. If you're an S corporation, you should be paying yourself W-2 wages, not 1099. You're kind of doing it incorrect at that point. So you may want to look into that, whoever asked that question.
Good point. Thank you. I missed that.
Melissa, this is
right,
Gabe. I'd like to butt in just
ahead.
for a second and remind folks that we have quite a few questions, but we will be posting or emailing back to you the Q&A compilation. We have your email addresses through registration, I think, so we can go ahead and supply that to you afterwards, assuming we don't get to all these questions. So thanks, folks, for your patience on that.
Our next question is geared towards the ADA program. And can out-of-state fishermen with an LLC in Alaska be eligible for ADA?
Absolutely. If they're Alaska registered businesses or business and they're operating in Alaska, they most definitely can apply to our programs. With the AK Safe Guarantee program that Gabe had given us the information on, it's working through a eligible lender that is doing business in Alaska. So that also could be an out-of-state bank that has quite a bit of business in Alaska. And I've actually had quite a few conversations with parties on that side. I'm anticipating that most of the reception for the program will be with Alaska banks and credit unions because they're familiar with who ADA is as a public corporation of the state of Alaska. But I've also been having quite a few conversations with banks that are external to Alaska who know who ADA is and are interested in the program and are interested in getting the benefits ultimately to the businesses that need the capital, and realizing that in this economic emergency, it makes sense that we're all working together to keep you in business for next year's season.
Thank you. If someone has applied for a loan, is there a way, and they have an application number, is there a way to check on the status of their loan?
Are you referring to the economic injury disaster loan or the PPP loan? Well, I'll talk about both. For the PPP
Sure, yeah.
loan, if you want to check the status of your PPP loan, like you submitted it but wasn't sure if you got approved before the funding ran out, check with the bank to make sure that they still have it and that they plan on submitting it when the application opens up again on Monday. So please verify with your bank. Now, in regards to the economic injury disaster loans, the only way that what Office of Disaster Assistance are saying is the only way to get a status is to contact their Office of Disaster Assistance Center. So let me see if I can get that 1-800 number for you real quick. So the 1-800 number is 1-800-659-2955, or you can email them at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. Now, SBA has allocated a lot of resource to the customer service center, so you should be experiencing smaller wait time than when we first started responding to the COVID-19. So hopefully that helps you out.
All right, thank you. So this next question is, they saw that SBA offers a program for funds up to $5 million for small businesses. Is this program an option for commercial fishermen? In their scenario, they're having to refinance their entire portfolio, including home mortgage, vessel, IFQ, and gear loans.
And by the way, we've identified Kevin Wynn, who's called in, and so he's now unmuted.
With the traditional 7A and 504 loans, I would say just like the PPP loan, they're done with a lender. What I've always told people who's interested in the SBA guarantee loans is talk to your lender first and see if you can get a loan approved in a conventional way. It's much faster. There's less payment. Now, if there is issues with trying to get your loan approved that way because of for whatever reason, then the SBA guarantee loans are there for you. There is a extended review process because now SBA is involved and there are SBA guarantee fees. But with the SBA guarantee loans, SBA guarantees a certain percentage of the loan for the banks, which gives lenders a better chance of getting approved for the loan. You don't even have to come to SBA when you apply for the SBA guarantee loans. The bank will work with you in filling those applications out.
And a follow-up question from the same individual is, what are the weighing differences between the disaster loan program and this everyday program?
Well, the main thing, number one thing is the interest rates. The PPP is with the PPP loan, there is we try to make it where the business will be able to have the loan forgiven, if not the majority of it, all of it being forgiven. That's not available in your traditional 7A and 504 loan. And then also the interest rate for PPP. The term, if part of your loan is not forgiven, then it turns into a loan, and it has a 2-year term with a 1% interest rate. With the economic injury disaster loans, it's at 3.75% with a 30-year term. So if you can get the PPP and the EIDL, I highly recommend that to go that route first. But we're just saying that if you are not able to get the PPP and the EIDL, the other options are our traditional SBA 7A and 504 loans.
All right, thank you. So our next question is from someone who is currently fishing, but so far this year, they're at about 60% of their normal income. So they are working, but are feeling economic hardships. What would you recommend as far as help in this kind of situation?
I would recommend I would recommend to anyone to apply for both the economic injury disaster loan and the PPP. With the economic injury disaster loans, there is the advance which you don't have to pay back. There's that benefit to it. And then also, you can use that money to help pay for costs that whatever you can't cover, your operating costs that you can't cover, which are 60% of your normal revenues. And then also the PPP, it allows you to get a loan where if you use it in accordance with the guideline, 100% of it could be forgiven. So, but I just gotta kind of warn people who's listening, if you do get an EIDL advance and a PPP loan, keep in mind that any amount that you get from the EIDL advance will not be forgiven on the PPP. So just something to think about if you do get both of them.
Yeah, and Clark, it's Kevin Wynn. I wanted to mention on the economic injury disaster loan that the payments are deferred for 1 year, and you're under no obligation to accept the economic injury disaster loan, and it's a direct loan from the federal government. So SBA services the loan, we underwrite it, therefore the underwriting criteria of the loan is a lot less lenient than the banks, and we service the loan also. So if you need to modify the loan, if you need additional money, you can come back to SBA, and if you don't want as much as we are offering you, you don't have to take that full amount either.
All right, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and that brings us up to 1 o'clock. And so this person is looking for clarification on where do fishery participants apply for assistance?
I'll try that one, Melissa. This is Gabe. I think that a good place to try for assistance first might be to check with your local lender, or excuse me, check with the lender that you use. They're going to be the person, that entity that you'll be able to apply for the PPP through. If you don't meet their requirements and aren't able to apply through them, then you can use some of the programs that Clark mentioned earlier, like Cabbage or PayPal. The other thing is to take a look at that Sea Grant Law Center site that I referenced on the slides, and go to that guideline, that set of guidance that they produced for self-employed persons, and you'll have some good resources there.
Dave, if I could,
All right.
if I could add
please.
one side of it, just from the programs that ADA has, what I would ask you is check out our website, look at the different programs. The AK Safe Guarantee Program may not be directly applicable. And we talk about numbers of up to $1 million under the guarantee, but it's not meaning that you can't look at a guarantee that's in the 50, to 100,000 level. It's just the cap that's on that. And so don't let that detract you from your interest or talking with your lenders on that program. The other thing I would ask you to do is also look at the Department of Commerce and Economic Development. ADA sponsors 2 funds, loan programs through DCCED, that one specifically is the Small Business Economic Development Loan Program, which we provided some additional funding to. And that's administered by Jim Anderson. Please look on our website for that information. Also look on the Department of Commerce for that website, because that is an area that you can apply funding, and those loans go up to $3,000.
Can I ask you a question there, Alan? Does ADA lend on intangibles?
But can you give me how would you describe intangibles in this case, please?
Like the fishing quota?
Not directly, and I don't know I don't know specifically, and that'd be a specific question ultimately for the commerce under that SBID program as well,
Okay.
if they are able to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have that direct information for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I historically, I did not think they did, and I think that's an important thing to let them know, because most of them, it would be their vessel, right? That they'd be looking at using Alaska Safe.
I think so, and that's really where and I'm glad you highlighted that, Lee, is that would be the principal asset, I would think, that is most ready engaged with a lender as collateral. And what we're doing under the AK Safe Guarantee Program is trying to increase the advance rates that banks, other lenders, credit unions are doing against them, provide additional capital to people right now when they're experiencing this emergency. And I'm sure at the same time addressing loan modifications, payment deferrals under those vessels. The intention of the program is to also allow those lenders to get some additional capital out to the borrowers against an already invested piece of equipment.
Thank you. Sorry to hijack you there, Melissa.
No, it's okay.
Well, from my side, Lee, I think those are great questions. Thank you for raising them.
So I think we should thank everybody. Thank you for our panelists for joining us. Thanks everybody else for joining us. We're going to wrap up. But just before we do, I want to just name off some of the websites that we saw listed there at the end of Gabe's slides that we'd like to refer you to. So we've got the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development website. You would go there to look for information about unemployment. We've got the Alaska Small Business Development Center and the U.S. Small Business Administration that you'd go to look for some of the loans that we heard from those folks. We've got the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. Head there to look for the ADA programs that we heard about. And then the National Sea Grant Law Center has been doing great work on a national level in trying to help people in the seafood industry get information. So check out those websites as well. We'll get out the information from this website, from this webinar as quickly as you can. And I imagine the folks that have been here and were willing to be on our panel would also be willing to work with you individually. So feel free to reach out to them as well. Thanks so much. Yes.
Sonny, may I give one other phone number for if anyone has any other questions about the AK Safe Guarantee Program? We have a specific phone line set up for it, and that's 771-3043. And everyone is welcome to give it a call.
Great, thanks so much. And are there any of our other panelists want to mention specific websites or resources that I didn't mention there?
Not that it's a specific resource, but if anybody has any individual questions or wants some help with, filling out any of this stuff or asking questions in general, we're always here to try to assist. The fishing industry is what we, you know, our specialty. That's primarily what we lend to. So it's kind of going to be an interesting year, and we're happy to help in any way we can.
Great, thank you, Lee. Any of our other panelists want to pipe in before we sign off?
And thanks to you guys for doing this.
Yes, our pleasure. And feel free to reach out to Alaska Sea Grant. We can also help direct you to people if you know your local agent, or check out our webpage. And I hope everyone stays well and has a safe summer on the water.
Thanks.